Welcome everyone to Monday. So today we're gonna be taking a look at support and resistances in trend lines, the advanced adventure, right, or the advanced lookup. So I know this is a basic. We already have gone through it in a very flash way, right, very quick way. I believe it was on chapter 0, right? So there's no 0 chapter, but it was 1, 2, and 3 chapters before uh, jumping to chapter number 1. There was just trading with the OC, if I'm not mistaken. Other than that, yes, as you can see, I already have a fight with the lawnmower. Yep. Or as my friends would say, my ears grow on me. Grow on me. All right. Other than that, guys, this course it's been designed for you guys, or to try to catch all of the most frequent asked questions that you guys may have along the way. Now that we already have a setup on how to trade up, I think that a couple of questions might be coming up float, right? So let's go back to basics and then reanalyze in depth all of the things that we've been learning. Let's get started with support and resistance, and of course, its natural next iteration, trend lines. So let me get started with you guys before we wrap into the charts, and let me just mention you guys because you guys are awesome. Crypto Mindset, welcome, bro. Welcome. Let's also have Alexander G in the house. What's up? Welcome, Alexander. We have the Queen Note inside. Hey, all set says that he's gonna be taking a seat at the back. Great, brother. Said seat up, or sorry, laid back. Put your feet up and enjoy. We don't mind you getting comfortable for these classes. So welcome, Jay Violet in the house. Rock on. Welcome, Jay Violet. Love to see you here. Thank you so much for joining. Buck, what's up, brother? Let's jam it up. Absolutely. Great, my friend. Who else we have in the chat? Hey, Harp. By the way, yeah. Hey, Harp. I got back my stash of fresh coffee. So again, I will be start making my coffee in on orange juice. I don't know if you guys have tried it. Guys, try it. You have nothing to lose. It tastes weird, to be honest, the first time, but it kind of like a weird in the good way. So other than that, take a sip of that. You won't regret it. If you do, just come back in here and let me know. Okay, DGT, what is up, brother? Welcome. BDC Port Corp, what is up, my friend? By the way, BC Port Corp is the one hosting the trading competition that we talked about today in the morning market report. Do not miss that competition. It is free to join. You don't need to pay anything, right? You can win up to $100. Get your knowledge tested. Who else we have in here? Crypto coin mindset. What is up? Shubi, what's up, Shubi? Who else we have in here? Justin, Bunks in Bunks. Yo, see, good morning, my friend. Welcome. All right, let's get it started, man, and let's see what I got for you guys. Perfect. Let's just do a little recap on what we have left off, right? BDC on a broadening wedge, right? We're talking about patterns, and the broadening wedge, it is created by 2 or 3 trend lines, right? So let's just go back into the basics here, right? The basics, but in depth, all right? So first of all, you see that between a support, right, or a resistance, there's basically no difference, right? They are just lines. So usually you just call a support when this line it's below the price action, and you call it a resistance when it's above below the price action, right? So basically resistance to go up, right, and support for going downwards. So that is basically it. Let me start picking a couple of things up because I want to make you think a little bit. Let me go for a hand pick area. I think this could be a good one. Yeah, I think so. I think this is gonna be a good one right here. All right, remember at this point I'm not zooming into chunky candles, right now. Chunky candles, let's just get them into the side room today. We want to see structure, right? Remember, we always start with structure. Let me just clean my charts so we have nothing here. All right, a support line. What is a support and how could you maybe identify it? And remember, this is also trying to resolve some Q&A that you may have, right? So most common questions and answers. Let's see. So a support, usually you define it, right, on two ways. Either areas of big retracement to the upside because it's a support, right? Or areas where you can see the price action, right, having a hard time breaking through, right? So for example, this one. So let me ask you a question. And I think at this point you already have it. You have been practicing. Let me try to add some support lines, right? So look at that. I see right here 2 weeks. So where is it my support? Is it right there? I mean, on the week, right here? Or is it right here on this other week? Let me just show it to you. Or is it right here on this other week? But in this case, it's cutting this other one, right? And then what happens with the rest? Because I also see another maybe support somewhere in here. Like, for example, this one looks a little bit better because we have 1 week, another week, third week, fourth week, right? But what happens with that price action going downwards? In fact, we have a little bit more in here, right? So, all right. I've also been told by OC and many other ones in the crypto space, right, that my support and resistances are not lines, right? They are actually representing zones, right? So what kind of zone is that? What are they talking about, right? I mean, is that zone below? Is that zone above? Or is that zone in the middle? If that is the case, well, shouldn't I be drawing a trend line through where most of the price action is going, right? Because if it's this a zone and I want to see where is it most supported, right? Well, then I think this will be an amazing area, right? Based on what I just said. I mean, of course, it's not taking the itty bitty tiny candles that can reach just the way back downward, but it's taking that many hits. Look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I mean, we can go on. I bet you that we have like 50, right? And if we look at it as a support, well, then we bounce, right? With a little slack, right? With a little wiggle room, right? But we bounced, we bounced, we bounced, we bounced, so on and so forth. And then previous support becomes new resistance, right? We rejected. We kind of did nothing here, right? Oh, then we bounced, right? So what is it? Well, the short answer is whatever you like, right? The point in drawing some trend lines, there's multiple kind of trend lines, right? You can go for just grabbing the wicks, right? And let's get started with that one. And then we just move our way up, all right? Grabbing the wicks. These areas usually call for a big rejection zone, right? If we're talking about zones, we, by the way, I do advise taking a look at those zones, right? It depends on your perspective. And what am I going to be talking about perspective here? And I know I could be getting a little bit of a hit, right? Of a hit on the maybe on Twitter or in the crypto space. Because when we talk about zones, how do you define that zone? Well, then why is it then a line, right? How do I measure it? And then also, what is OCs telling me that it depends, right? Why is it just in my perspective? And am I not here to learn about it? Of course you are, right? But the point is that whatever makes your brain go, aha, that is it. I understand it, right? At the end of it all, you can draw like. My dad used to say that the lion is not like it is being drawn, right? So he kind of like went to me and do something like that. And then he said, what is this? And I was like, I have no idea. That's a lion. And why? Because the lion is not as it's being drawn, or it's not as it is represented, right? Dad jokes, Mexican dad jokes, all right? So the point is, as long as you draw something that makes sense for you and what you're perceiving, right? I think that's going to be the best tool. So I'm here to not just tell you theory, all right? I'm here also to share you what I have learned, and I've been teaching for a long time. Believe me, a long time. And also I want to share with you what my alumni has been able to absorb the best, and then concentrating here and basically just giving it all out right here. So it is basically what it makes sense for you. Every single one of us have a different perspective, right? How do you know that I don't know, maybe Fruit Loops, right, taste the same to you that it tastes the same for me, right? There's no way to know. How do you know? And I mean, guys, this is awesome. Like, you just go with your wife or your husband, right? And get two very close shades of one color and ask him and ask her. Usually, us men, we're more simple, and we can't tell apart from one color to another. And usually, women, right, can. And they go, "Hey, are you blind? Are you kidding me?" Right? And I think this is hilarious. But it all depends on perspective and what are we able to see and perceive. And that also has to do in how we grew, right? How our brain develops, so on and so forth. So without that many conversation, right? Whatever makes sense to you, that's how we're going to be living it out. Why? Because if you start doing what makes sense to you, then the market structure is going to be translated into something that does make sense for you. All right, so let's go and explain the weeks, right? So basically, look at that. I'm counting the weeks. The only thing that I need to understand is both. If I'm not considering what kind of zone, well, then consider a bidirectional zone. Does that make sense? Up and down, right? Especially when you're grabbing this kind of wicks, like going down wicks very quickly. And that is because you want to have a little bit of a previous zone and an overextending zone. Why? Because you want to have that little slack to be able to feed in another indicator, right? Because remember, we usually advise, or I usually advise using at least 3 different indicators, or at least 3 different methods, right? Maybe support and resistance, order blocks, or liquidity zones, or whatever you like, but just combine 3 of them so you can find what this is all about, which is confluence, right? Or confluence, however you want to say it. Week's wife, welcome. I just saw you. Welcome. Great to have you around. Nice to see you. All right, who else do we have in here? Maybe have I shout out everyone? If I haven't, please let me know. At this point, Piper Academy, at Piper Academy, and then let me know that I have not yet shout you out, brother, because I do want to. All right, so other than that, we need to consider a little bit of a buffering zone. All right, if you already are considering that buffering zone, how could you considering it? Well, if my brain is saying, all right, I can catch this low, and then maybe I can catch this low, and look at that, I can catch this low. How are those wicks reacting? They overshoot downwards. You see that? So if that overshoot downwards, well, then my buffering zone is going to be below or underneath me, right? Whatever makes sense for you. The point is that you understand it, right? There's another way, which basically this is my favorite way, and I think this is the most thought way to draw trend lines this upcoming, right? So sorry, support and resistances, and that is to find a common denominator, right? That does have an equilibrium between big rejections, multiple hits, right? And not being one of those, like outside or an anomaly. Does that make sense? Right? So let's go for that one. I think this is the most common one, the most taught one, and the one that actually kind of plays along with my style. You will also see me whenever I'm, for example, doing the 1 minute, 3 minutes, or the 5 minutes, that my trend lines, I usually draw them like this. I'm going to be explaining that in a minute, all right? But let's just figure this one out first. At this point, what I want to get, it is an equilibrium between the big, and how big is it? Well, how big, whatever your brain tells you to, right? But a big rejection, all right? A big rejection and not such a great or huge overshoot, right? I do leave it some slack to catch, so maybe this one, right? So I'm willing to move this slightly above, right? To catch this one in order to also, while also keeping this one, this one, this one, I don't know, this one, this one. And guys, when whatever method you're doing till now, so previous and this one, when you draw this kind of trend lines, I usually advise to wedge it. So what do I mean with that? When I see a breakout, remember, previous resistance becomes new support. Previous supports becomes new resistance. This is what I want to see. All right. I want to see, and let me just do it graphically, right? Let's just imagine that we have price action coming downwards, right? and then it just loads to infinity. And whatever happens, right? And then we also have some price action coming in here, right? And then it just loads to infinity. I usually imagine myself when I'm drawing this kind of trend lines. Let me do it like this, that my trend line, it's a solid stick, all right? It's a solid piece of whatever, rebar, stick, whatever you want to call it, right? And then when I put it between two zones and I let it go, right? What's going to happen with the physics? This one is going to come down in here. It's going to impact this zone. And the other one, well, it's going to swing. And it's going to swing upwards here, right? Like that. And then if I just keep doing this, this is going to be giving me either a support or resistance, or if these things are too interlocked, I might have a trend line, all right? But so far, can you see how they're wedging right that between this point and this point? Well, this is going to be giving me a support and resistance. Then, if you notice, this is not a flat support. This is not a flat resistance, right? There's a slight bit of overlapping. What kind of overlapping do I have? I might have a little bit of overlapping like this between one and another. You see that one? So I'm catching the bottom and catching the top. So what I'm going to be doing, just to average down this anomaly, all right, I'm just going to be imagining or seeing with my eyes, right? Let me zoom in, because right now we do one chunky candles, right? This bottom to interlock with this area, on interfere, and this top to interfere with the next one. You see how the center, or how this box creates a center line? That is going to be, for me, my support and resistance. Why? Because regardless, I want to have a flat line. This is going to be giving me intersection points up ahead. This is some geometry. Don't worry about it. We're not going to be diving in depth into the intersection theory on geometry, because we will have to diverge too much of it, right? But the point is that whenever you prolong this, you're averaging down small anomalies, right? Which is basically what you want, all right? So as you can see at this point, I can drag my trend line, maybe put it right there in here, right? And then draw back down this zone all the way down here until it matches. So right here, you'll see that I have a support or a resistance, or both, all right? So having said this, all right, that I'm giving myself that little wedging zone, I can start looking for that kind of areas, right? So let me see if I can get you one that is kind of like it's a good one. Let me see. Where was I? Drawing some support and resistances. And of course, I have lost it, but whatever. I think we can do it right here. Perfect. So what do I see? I see a weak zone, another weak, some areas here, some tops in here. I think that's good enough. But let's just see, look at that, the opposite. Support, support, support. So can I wedge that line? Let's just draw it, let it drop, right? So till that support, till this, sorry, till that, yeah, support, till this support, until this resistance. You see that? A quick point of view here, or a quick thing, is that you can go over here and set either horizontal ray or horizontal line, right? Horizontal line is going to be giving you both infinite to your right and to your left, all right? I kind of like better the ray, both this kind of ray, which has 2 points of perspective, or let me show it to you, this horizontal ray. If I just click the horizontal ray, wherever I'm able just to click, from the point that I'm clicking, it's gonna shoot a straight horizontal 0 degrees or 90 degrees rate, 0 degrees, I think so, right? Rate. And then I just adjust it, right? So it does that little average between the wedging points, right? And that's gonna be my support. This is usually from the point that you are investigating or doing your research. That's why I use this in here, because I'm usually interested on seeing where I start doing my analogy. If you rather do this, you can do for the horizontal ray, and you just click it, and it's going to be infinite to my right, infinite to my left. Look at how well it had played in here, in here, in here, in here, in here, right? In there. And this is the case that I want to talk about up next, all right? But, and then right here, so on and so forth. So this is practical because you can just draw it once, and then whenever we go all the way back to wherever we are, right, we can start looking at previous areas, right, that they were long gone forgotten, all right? So that is a little bit of a trick. Now, let's talk about the other area that we talked, where was it? Very far to my left, which was this one. All right, so remember that I also mentioned that a support or resistance should be a zone. Hey, Mark Dodge, what's up, brother? Just seeing you here. French Toaster, hey, what's up? Holy balls. Love it, bro. Thank you guys for joining. It always gets me excited and going. Thank you guys. All right, so let's talk about this, all right? So OC told me, right, or whatever, whoever told me that a support is a zone, right? Maybe I can, or my brain, if I just zoom this out enough, look at like, maybe this looks flat to my eye, right? Maybe that looks flat. Maybe I'm seeing this as a support, right? Like the zone. All right, well then, OC just also told me that use those little boxes and then use my median. All right, that makes sense to me, like this one. All right, so let me just lock this one in here, and also let me just clean this chart out. Perfect. That is a complete valid support and complete valid resistance. The only thing that you need to do here is that your brain knows how to read it, right? If this makes sense to you, keep doing it. Keep doing it, because what I'm here to is to show you what things that should be matching with what you see. If the first version match better, do the first version. If the second version of support and resistance match better, do it, right? So don't ask me, just do what makes sense to you, all right? So other than that, let's zoom in here, and we have a ton of supports and a ton of resistance. In fact, just by encasing the actual range, we can have the median, and that median actually shows you, look at that, beautiful areas of ranging or beautiful areas of support and resistance. Support, right, and resistance. All right, resistance and then support, and now if we go of the median, and usually this is right here the point in which most of us that use this median line of a range for a support of a resistance are very interested in, because usually out of that points we take off for big movements. All right, that take us to channels. We already have talked about channels, but let's just do a quick overview here. If we know how to set support and resistances, we can set a farther, stretch it all the way down as we can, right? Like here, just of course trying to ignore those anomalies that happen, right? Just to average things up, and then do it as far as we can up here, and again try to flatten it out. Remember that we have talked about another tool in here that helps us doing so. In the second one, almost all the way to the middle, there we go. We can drag, we can click that one, click, just move away the button, there we go, and then just click away. You're gonna have a couple of things, and let me just right click once again here, lock it. All right, let's unlock this other one. Oh, come on, which one was it? Yep, should be this one. Unlock, perfect, and then clear this out. So you see that right away, mathematically speaking, you already have cut the range. It's not the same as a support and as a resistance, because we can clearly see, all right, if you were paying attention, that we have a resistance in here, right? And it's not this one. In fact, this line, how many times it have been impacted? Once, right? As an actually resistance, once. So how could that be? That is it, because of the meaningful volume that we have in those two spikes. So just so you know, but when you're using this ranging tool, it's not the same. All right, it's not the same. But what it's gonna helping you find out, which is what we want to look for, it is the median, which is another support and resistance averaging, right? You see, almost perfect, averaging the what? The price action. All right, once again, let's just do a quick recap and let's move into then trend lines, the next iteration here. All right, so let me just right click, unlock, and then let's move on. All right, perfect. Support areas where we can find a balance, right? From, and this is the most thought version, right? Balance between bounces, all right, and overshooting, right? So stretching as much as we can, not to lose sight that is an area of a bouncing zone with a little slack, of course, at the bottom, but trying to catch as many important wicks as we can. All right, version number 2, which is actually the first one I explained, just the main lines, the main wicks, right, that define that line. Look at that. All right, and then finally an average zone that represents where most of the price action is going to be taking place for rejection or breakout retest. So breakout retest, up we go. All right, so that is basically the 3 ways to draw a trend line. The 3 of them are correct as long as it makes sense to you and you know what you are looking at. Right, let's go for the next one, which is a trend line. All right, when talking about trend lines, things change slightly bit, and let's use this same example. Right, let me just over exaggerate this. All right, make it a little bit more chunky. I know you guys love chunky candles and I do too. All right, and we're gonna be going for, and this is what we want to be a little bit careful, right? Overshooting, and also the areas where we can have most impact. Usually we start with, or I usually start with areas that have the most impact. That is because that's how my brain looks at it, right? But you can start with most important bounces. Like for example, starting here and then immediately you have another one. Now you have a trend line, right? It doesn't make that much sense, does it? Until we have a third one. So is this too much utilitarian or not really? Because I mean, I needed to wait all this time, right? When everything has already played out, right? And I missed the whole movement. So what kind of trend line is that? All right. So let's go for another one in here. And that's what we thought we'd teach you guys, that support and resistances are zones. Now we're going to be implementing it into a support which is tilted, right? So let's go for this support. Like for example, remember I told you most areas of importance, right? So I see an area of importance here, another one in here, another one in here, another one in here, and I can clearly see how the whole thing is moving. Remember, I have the whole chart in here in front of me, all right? And then after that, we're going to be learning how to set up trend lines based on an ongoing trend, all right? Which we already have. Remember how we draw that megaphone? Basically, that is it. But don't worry, we're going to be looking at this. All right, so I have a top, retracement, top. That's it. I'm drawing a trend line here, right? I could even, look at that, move it slightly over and hit, there we go, most of these candles and most of these top candles. You see how now, even if I just stretch it a little bit to my left and then pull it up in here, right? Let me just get this out of the way. And then maybe in here, just slightly downward. There we go. I think I can catch a good balance between important zones. Well, then what happens? The price goes low. Perfect. I have 1 point. I have another point. And right there, I can start drawing another trend line. So let's try to do it, right? Like here. There we go. And let's just leave it as is, all right? You see that despite this could get messy a lot, right? We still respected it until we failed. Breakout retest. And then usually when we have this breakout retest inside, we usually look for the top of the range. But let's not lose sight of what we have in here. What do we have? Meaningful area, meaningful top, and meaningful top, right? Remember, let's just imagine that we are live in here. So what we do right here, it is, look at that. Can I do this? And remember the wedging strategy. Can I wedge it here? Oh, yeah. What happens if I just let it go? This is going to be dropping. And it's going to get wedged in here, and I have another trend line. All right. Usually, you're gonna start seeing a bunch of lines revealing itself like that. Don't worry, we're gonna be cleaning them as we have more information. But so far, Remember that we do what we can with what we have, all right? So what happens here, remember I'm live trading and then goes back in here. Oops, I do my entry. Look, where am I at? Oh, above my zero line, possible goose hit in the green. There we go, entry, and off we go. And I'm usually aiming at the top of my most immediate support and resistance, all right? What else could I be having here? And this is where your support and resistance start making sense, right? Maybe if I just go a little lower here. No, well, I don't have anything to my left. Let me see if I can pull something out. Not too far away. But this is, for example, when the meaningful areas start making sense, right? Where's my meaningful area? Between lows, wedge between highs, and then between lows. So where do I take my profits? Somewhere around here. Look at that. We range in almost perfect synchrony with this box in here. You see that? Because we're oscillating back and forth within an average support resistance. All right. This is not catching actually neither the best tops, neither the beautiful bottoms. It is catching the center, the median, right? And how that plays out on your favor. Do you have a little bit more slack? Yes, you do. But that is the price that you pay for using one of those, right? You also could be taking these ones in, by using other ones, you had nothing. There was nothing built up in here, right? Or nothing that I can clearly see. So this is how you start combining support resistances and trend lines. All right, let's go and take a look at another thing that usually happens. In fact, let's go for a very famous formation in here. So what we got in here, look at that. We have a trend line going downwards and then a trend line. Look at that, wedging it, going upwards. All right. So in this case, I'm going to be mixing them both. So what I usually want the best possible scenario to enter. So what am I going to be trying to do is adjust my main trend line as close as I can to my bodies of my candles. All right. So like this. In this case, I have a very strong support. And then you can see, look at that, overshoot, 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 overshoot. So what can I do? I can usually right click on this trend line and clone it. And then push it all the way out and catch the very bottoms, right? Or even fixing it just a slightly bit. There we go, to catch this one, this one, this one, and that one. And now you have a trading entering zone. Remember that this is not the first thing that we talked about, those zones, right? This comes from the Wyckoff theory, or the Wyckoff charts that we've been talking about, right? Especially from my favorite, the Wyckoff accumulation. We talked about overshooting, right? Main range, outer upper range, and outer lower range. Now you start seeing again how one thing pairs to another. All of everything is trading is connected, and that is because the amount of information, the kind of information that we have. We use the same numbers to interpret them differently. Whatever floats your boat, right? If you rather look at the Wyckoff, if this makes sense to you better, do Wyckoff. If you like to do support and resistances, do support and resistance, whatever you want to do that support and resistances like, right? And so on and so forth. Once again, whatever makes sense to you. I'm just showing you the possibilities. So sometimes maybe you just watch one video or two videos and they told you this is the way. And you said, you repeat blindly, this is the way, right? And then maybe there was something slightly different, right? And I just want to show you that different perspective that maybe can make you do, hey, right? That's it. That actually makes sense to me, right? So that's what I'm trying to show you guys. We also have Trading Tuition in the house. What's up, bro? Welcome, welcome. All right. Now that we have this knowledge, let's do the next iteration. So how do we draw trend lines to catch a trend, right? For example, right here. one trend line could become another thing. But usually a trend is defined by a series of higher highs and higher lows, right? For what? For a bullish trend, sorry. And then a lower low and lower high, right? A series of lower lows and lower highs for a down trend. Let's also remember that we have inner structure. This is either a range or a trend, however you want to see it. For me, a trend needs to be a multi-candle at least twice of the dropping zone for the ranging zone, right? So if this is my range, if this is my range length, I usually want to define it, and this is for me, twice as long for the next movement to then do this, all right? At least I want to have twice as my inner structure to define a trend. So that's usually what I define between a range and a trend. Remember at the beginning, I told you that we're going to be talking about this. This is it, right? How do you tell apart between a trend? Because remember, now we're migrating to trend lines. What is a trend line? Guys, important. What is a trend line? It's by definition a measure tool for the trend. So do you know what is a trend? Do you know how to tell apart from a range? Here it is my perspective. Again, whatever makes sense to you, right? But this is my perspective. When I see ranging, all right, or some kind of movement, a tight movement, right, and then a breakout, I usually want to see the thick body at least being twice as big, or the drop to be as twice as big, all right, for then the next range to play it out. Why? Because that gives me a data set like this range, and this is, of course, this is just symmetrical. Drop, range, drop, range, drop, range, drop, right? So on and so forth. That gives me the basis to draw a trend line for a bearish scenario, a trend line or a channel. You see? So if you want to slightly tilt this, be my guest, right? But as long as the drops are not twice as big as the ranges, I'm not gonna be calling it a trend. I'm gonna be calling it a range, slight tilted downwards or slight tilted upwards or flat right ranges. All right. So just so you know, difference how I tell apart between one and another. All right. So let's go back and let's redefine it. So what is a range or a trend? Guys, let's do that exercise. This is going downwards, right? Is this a trend or is this a range? I would say this is a little bit difficult. Look at that. For example, in this case, let's clone it. Oh, not that one. Let's clone this one. Let's paste it here. Let's put it all the way down. Look at that. This is one time at most. So is this a trend or this a range? This is a range, right? So let's do this one here. This is tricky. Am I going to be catching the tops and bottoms? Not really. Remember where we are ranging, right? The meat of the thing here, right? Let's clone it. Let's clone it. Again, remember twice, once, twice. So barely. So be my guest. You want to call this a trend? Go for it, right? Because I mean, we can also do a very nice trend line. Again, if it's not a trend, but you can still do a trend line, do it. Who's telling you not to, right? And if somebody's telling you not to, and then you can do it successfully, well, you know what to do. The important part in here is whatever you're doing, even if it have no sense, but makes sense to you and it's working, keep doing it, all right? So the point is that you make money, that you make sense of it. You know how many times I've been called like this guy have no idea what's doing, and then I just kind of like work a new strategy out. too many times. All right. So once again, trend versus range. That doesn't really matter as long as you can measure it. All right. So the point is measure it and make a profit on it. All right, let's go back and then do the trend lines. Now let's just wrap it up on the trend lines. We've been talking about it for a long time, and I want to finish this up with real examples. All right. So right here, depending on how you zoom in, also you're gonna be defining either a trend or a range, right? So for example, for me, is this a range or is this a trend? For me, this is an inner structure, however you want to call it, but it's inner structure. Why? Because I can go zoom out and then do this, right? And now that I have it, look at that. I'm trying to fit this one. So I'm going for first, remember what we talked about. Let's go first to try to grab as many as we can. Look at that. I grab all of those. I grab this ones. I go through them, and go and so forth, right? I think I'm spot on. Then right click, clone it, and create my zone. What's going to be my zone? I'm now going to be discriminating the rest of the not that important areas. So just grabbing the tops, grabbing the TP tops, grabbing the TP tops, right? So is this a confirmed breakout? Is it? Guys, ding, ding, ding. Is it? Looks like a confirmed breakout, all right? Looks like a confirmed breakout. But we still need the what? And this one should be longer. There we go. A flip of the ribbon. All right. So we are basically breakthrough, retest. Off you go, guys. Are you long? If not, this is not the time. Wait maybe for a retracement into the zone, right? And guess what? If we already have this other trend line, we can expand it to my right. Let's try to do it manually. There we go. And that could be your next possible entry right there at some vertices. All right. All right. So let's go over now a couple of other stuff. So now that we have a trend line, now that we also have learned support and resistances, zones, how to differentiate support and resistances, let's go out talk about the same support or resistance, median support and resistance, right? If I do that, let's just go ahead and do it. Where is most of the thing happening, right? So I can see all of this moving, and I'm trying to go straight through the center. Maybe this is the anomaly, right? And then I get back into it, right? So let's just do it like that. And then I can clone this top one. And usually when I clone it, I can just drag it down. And in most of the cases, without making any changes, or just with tiny itty bitty adjustments, I can fit it in very, very nicely, right? So what do I have with this kind of trend lines? Now, a trend line with another trend line sandwiching the price action, it makes a range, right? Talking about ranges, remember the tool that we learned before. It is the regression trend. So from here to all the way down, and there we go. We have the easy peasy lemon squeezy sorry about that, trend calculation, or trend channel calculation. Remember, this is not touching tops at this point, all right? So you need to take in consideration that this could be giving you that buffering. Why? Because of the anomalies that we have here, right? Because of what is the anomaly? The overshoot of big momentum, or not big momentum, big volatility, huge volatility, all right? So that is basically what we got for today. Hopefully this has answered more questions, that it has rose questions, right? Let's just wrap it up with analysis right now. So what do I have in here? I can see, let me show you this example, this last example, a line that is being drawn there. It is within candles, itty bitty candles. Can I do something about it? Not really, not on the 4 hours. So why is it drawn there? Because that was drawn on the 5 minutes. If I go to the 5 minutes, my inner structure, it's going to change. The things that I consider to be a trend are going to change, all right? It's not the same a trend in the 4 hours than a trend in the 5 minutes. All right. Remember, how can we tell apart from a trend to a range? Because of the double size, or at least the spacing between ranging and dropping, ranging and dropping, ranging and dropping. All right. Sometimes it get too confusing, or a little bit confusing, but still, another way to tell apart is just zoom out until you see until you don't no longer see chunky candles, and then you can easily see tops, bottoms, ranges, right? Tops, and then you can define the range. The trend. Once you have the trend figured out, look at the same characteristics for your next trend scenario. So what can we do here? Can we do a trend line? Not really. Can we do a support? I think we're onto something. Look at here, 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 here. Maybe, even farther. Oh, look at that, even far before here. You see that? Support, support, resistance, 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 resistance. Inshallah. You see that? Perfect. So we have a very strong support resistance, right? Let me just finish the class up today at this point with this little advice. You're going to encounter yourself in a situation where you're going to be overdrawing your supports and resistances. Like, for example, in here. That's why I like to start in here. So the main point, what I'm looking at, is the one that caught my attention, right? But whatever, maybe like that. Maybe, look at this one, and maybe look at this one. Can I wedge it? Yes. So isn't this too much? I mean, what else can I do here? Top, maybe trend line there, or maybe another support in here. You see, because I have this. Maybe if I just pull it back downwards here, yep, it's also a support. So I mean, come on, how can I ever trade this, right? I mean, which support is gonna be the one? And there's many things that you need to clarify here. Which is the trade that you want to take, right? How big of a trend you want to have? Because let's look at this point, for example. And this is when your trend lines and support and resistance do convergence. And this is important. Let's go back at the beginning that I told you that we're not going to be talking about the geometry convergences. This is it. We're going to be talking about as much as right now, which is converging your trend lines with as few as your support and resistances. Why? Because when you break out, you want to have a point of reference for a retest, and then off you go till where? You see? That's what you want. So for example, right here, I think I can have barely enough weeks to create a trend line. It's not about the breakout, and guess where we are bouncing? Here. It's about the retest. What have we learned? Do we have another trend line? Yes, right here, or maybe right there. You see those? So when am I going to be jumping in? As I have another confirmation. It's not about the breakout, it's about the retest, right? I see maybe front running this because I'm on the 5 minutes, and off I go. Since I already have hit this one, I'm going to be speculating just to take the next one, which is going to be my stop loss at my trend line. All right. So that's how you start using the convergence between your points of geometry on support, resistance, and trend lines. Another thing that I was mentioning, I think I did not finish explaining, it is the size of the trade, not the trend. The trade that you want to be taking. Usually I trade inner structure trades, all right? So when I do a trend line, I usually want to grab from the bottom to the top, right? So if that is the case, what am I going to be trying to catch? This kind of movement. So anything maybe in between, like for example, if I see, look at these two supports, maybe this trend line, it's gone for me because I really want to grab at least this, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6% movement. All right. So everything in between, I'll just kind of ignore it unless it is essential. How can I tell it's essential? It is up to you. for example, between this one and this one, I can just get rid of this second one and then stretch this one a little bit farther of what I would like to. You see, I can do the same thing with here, stretch it just tiny bit above of what I would actually like to, right? And then clean it up. You see, now I do have an important resistance, right? And another resistance support in support. You see, that's how you start cleaning this up. Also, if you have chart prime, don't worry. You just go to your support and resistances. Let me just clear this up. Oh, where are you? Support and resistances. Did I turn them off? Maybe. All right, let's go and let me do... Or maybe they're fixed. Yeah, most likely. If not, let's just do it from scratch. Whatever, we still have time. So I can go to my support and resistances. Yep, I knew it. Those are fixed. There we go. Much better. All right. And then I can go just double click on my Market Dynamics Pro, go all the way down, and then look for support and resistances. And oh, they moved it away from what I used to. Multi-time frame support and resistances. All right. And then up to how many levels? You see? So maybe this is too cloudy for me. Let's just do 3. Click away. Wait for this to stop reading the thing. And just like magic, boom, up to 3. Right? Usually for me, a good level is up to 5. And then what I'm going to be playing with in here is going to be the proximity. I'm going to turn off rank data. I'm not going to be using it anymore. This is the importance, but still. All right. And then my layering. This layering or this layer, it is showing me again 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 supports. And I give a different color because they are 12 hours, fixed 12 hours. It doesn't matter if I go to the 1 minute. In this layer, I'm going to be looking at 12 hours support and resistances. Just the 5 most important ones. All right. So other than that, guys, hopefully you have enjoyed today. They do not record this, right? They're recorded, bro. I know that's a joke. But hey, JR, what's up, brother? So guys, thank you so much for joining. This is trend lines specified, or trend lines in depth. Hopefully we have learned a little bit in here. Remember, set your trend lines, do a little bit of that ranging system that we talked about also in the support and resistances, and try to jump in on that boundary, right, with the flip of your ribbon or whatever oscillator you're using to predict a reversal there, right? Other than that, use those trend lines for breakout, retest, and break off the trend, because remember, a trend line, it is by definition the tool that measures the trend. All right, guys, other than that, thank you so much for joining, and as always, see you guys tomorrow.